Like now I'm just describing what I'm doing on a random Tuesday or something like that. You know what I mean? Which is less autobiographical and more just like taking notes in a serial killer's journal or something. It's just really weird. So tell me more, please, John. This interesting song.
I think serial shopper rather than serial killer, but yeah. Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Audiophiles. My name's John. His name is Andy. How could you just leave me standing alone in a world that's so cold? More on that another time. Because it's Friday. Oh, yes, it is. We're a special episode, as always. We listen to the delightful tunes selected by one of our wonderful viewers. The case in point this time is from Madame. I added that bit. Danielle Drossos dash TT3QQ.
Okay.
That could be something rude. I don't know. We'll call her Danielle. And they had dropped a comment on The Passions. I'm in love with the German film star. Wonderful, expressive guitar in that one, all rickety. Anyway, they have dropped a tune for us to listen to. Pet Shop Boys. Hmm. Left to my own devices. I know this song because it's the Pet Shop Boys, and yeah. Anyway, so Andy doesn't. So
No.
delightful. Um, he will get off to go off and listen to it, and let everybody know what he thinks of it. So have you heard of the Pet Shop Boys at all?
Yes, yes. I think I know a couple of their tracks. One of them that I know the title of for sure. I think it's is it West End Girls? Yeah, yeah, that's the one I know.
Yeah, that's a banger.
Yeah, yeah. So it is said. Yeah, it leans in heavy with that like sort of monotone vocal delivery, as I recall, in that song. But that's really all I can think of by them off the top of my head. So I
Well,
know
that's
for a
just
fact.
your opinion, man.
Yeah, it is just my opinion, man. That is just my opinion. And it's my opinion of that song, not this one. This one I don't yet have opinions on. So, but in order to form them, I'm going to need to go off and give this thing a listen. So, left to my own devices. All right, let me go give this thing a listen, and I will come back and let you and everyone else know my feelings on the song.
Excellent.
Oh, that's pretty. It's little flourishes. Okay.
I get out of bed at 10:30, phone up a friend who's a party animal, turn on the news and drink some tea. Maybe if you're with me, we'll do some shopping. One day I'll read or learn to drive a car. If you pass the test, you can beat the rest. But I don't like to compete or talk street, street, street. I can pick up the best from the party animal.
Okay, we're a minute and 24 into this. Let's hit pause for a moment and assess where we are. Um, really interesting to get. Look, I would have never guessed or had in my bingo card that we were going to move to this kind of techno-y, synthy beat from where we started, which was this really beautiful orchestral sound that started with these sort of resonant, ominous notes, and then things started to take shape with a little bit of like flourishing and like embellishments that were going on, and then these. I think we picked up a little bit of key work and some horns. All sounded really, really good. It was just, and it didn't sound bad to make that shift into this aforementioned kind of techno synthy beat. It's just not what I had expected, but it works. Um, Admittedly, not the hugest fan of sort of like spoken word delivery. But it doesn't sound bad, and if anything, it helps me out as far as deciphering lyrical content. It sounded a bit, I don't know, like just like this stream of consciousness, like I'm doing this, then I'm doing that. There were these uh bits where I think he talked about like a party animal at some point. I'm not sure who that's in reference to. I'll continue to try to key in on the lyrics to see if I can make sense of them, especially given the clarity that they're provided with. But yeah, interesting sound so far. Let's see where it goes from here.
I could leave you, say goodbye, or I could love you if I tried. And I could
A little bit more sing-songy here.
and left to my own devices, I probably would. Pick up a brochure about the sun, learn to ignore what the photographer saw. I was always told
flourishes.
that you should join a club, stick with the gang if you want to belong. I was a lonely boy, no strength, no joy, in a world of my own. At the back of the garden, I didn't want to compete or
Nice little
play
bass
out
work.
on the street, or in a secret life. I was a roundhead general. I could leave you, say goodbye, or I could love you if I tried, and I could. And left to my own devices, I probably would. Left to my own devices, I probably would.
The chorus is interesting from a lyrical standpoint because he's talking about like I could leave you and say goodbye, or he could love you. Which is interesting because they're very different thing, and then he follows that up by singing, he probably would if left to his own devices, obviously title. But I don't know which one of those two he means when he says left to his own devices. He probably would leave the person or love them. Or maybe those two, maybe he's showing love by leaving because he's that problematic or whatever. But interesting delivery, and I'm not sure what the intent is in those lyrics, but the chorus does sound good. It's got this hooky nature to it. I think part of that is bolstered by the fact that he steps into this sort of sing-songy delivery rather than that almost monotone kind of spoken word delivery of the verses. But yeah, so far so good.
I was faced with a choice at a difficult age. Would I write a book or should I take to the stage? But in the back of my head I heard distant feet, Che Guevara and Debussy to a disco beat.
Wait. So in the back of his head, he was contemplating whether or not to be an author or an actor, but was distracted by the sound in the back of his head, which turned out to be a turn-of-the-century French composer and an Argentinian Marxist revolutionary dancing to disco. I don't know. He wrote it, not me. I hope I get some light shed on that very interesting tidbit there from the bridge. Let's take that back a little bit to make sure I just wasn't hearing things.
At a difficult age, would I write a book or should I take to the stage? But in the back of my head I heard distant feet, Che Che Guevara and Debussy to a disco beat.
Interesting.
It's not a crime when you look the way you do, the way I like to picture you. When I get home, it's late at night. I pour a drink and watch the fight. Turn off the TV, look at a book, pick up the phone, fix some food. Maybe I'll sit up all night and day, waiting for the minute I hear you say,
Snare roll.
I could leave you, say goodbye, or I could love you if I tried, and I could, and left to my own devices, I probably would. Come on baby, say goodbye, or I could love you if I tried, and I could, and left to my own devices, I probably would.
Harmonies there.
Left to my own devices, I probably would. Come on baby. Left to my own devices, I probably would.
That's lovely. Yeah, it's interesting. It's like I don't know, it's this sort of big band orchestral sound married to this very 80s sound. It almost sounds like a musical experiment. Like, let's take these two very disparate sounds and make them work together, not only functionally, but in a way that is appealing. You can't really deny that, especially the chorus in the song, has this sort of pop sound to it that becomes very earwormy. I mean, I was over here bopping my head to it, so I fell victim to its siren song. Yeah, this interesting. I liked a lot of what was going on here. I wouldn't naturally gravitate to this kind of sound necessarily, but I'm glad that it was recommended and that I got to give it a listen. And it had aspects to it that I thought were fun, aspects that I thought were funny, and aspects that I thought were interesting, from a macro level, just the idea of marrying these two sounds together, like I mentioned. All interesting stuff. I only know, I mean, one or two of the songs by these guys. This definitely was not one of them. But I did enjoy giving this a listen. I don't know how quick I'll be to flock back to it. Uh, but I mean, you can't deny that the song's got rhythm and movement and is sort of packaged in such a way that makes it, dare I say, gives it shades of this universal appeal. Like anyone could find that chorus hooky and poppy and danceable. So yeah, interesting stuff. The lyrical content is interesting. I mean, at points it sounds, I don't know much about the lead singer, but like it could be autobiographical, but then there's these other parts that are odd. And I think at one point he mentions not reading, and then later in the song he talks about picking up a book, which is interesting and at first listen seemingly contradictory, but I don't know. uh all of that is to say, it's got an interesting sound to it lyrically, it's got an appealing sound to it musically, and I love how they kind of drew outside the lines by combining these two seemingly disparate, different kind of genres or sounds of music, and making them work. It didn't sound like they were trying to jam a square peg into a circular hole. It actually kind of fit in an odd, interesting, and unexpected way. So yeah, hopefully John's got more on this song from the musical standpoint, the history of it, how it came to be, as well as lyrical content, because I found that to be really interesting, as I'm wont to do. So let's get back to him and find out some more.
Parker Dahl is back. So You've listened to Pet Shop Boys, Left to My Own Devices? I probably would. What do you think?
Very interesting song. This was a different sound. I mean, I can see the similarities a little bit between the one song that I am familiar with by these guys and aspects of this, but there are also aspects of this that are very much different than West End Girls, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, it was interesting to hear this amalgam occurring before me. I didn't expect it. Kicks off with this rather ominous orchestral sound of resonant strings that soon develops a bit with some flourishes on the of those strings and a full complement of sounds, including horns and I think keys and some sort of percussive flourishes as well. I think cymbals. And then an abrupt shift to a very interesting electronic beat at the 24-second mark. And this is what I mean by sort of this kind of like amalgamation of two different sounds. You have this kind of orchestral symphonic sound mixed with this almost like techno synthy kind of beat that joins it. So it's an odd marriage, but it by the end of it, I was left kind of impressed by the fact that it didn't seem as square peg in a circular hole, which you might think just reading on paper this combination of sounds. Um, it had a very quickened pace and aesthetically a very 80s sound to the mix once the verse kicked off. The singer joins in with a very direct kind of, again, kind of spoken word delivery. Um, but it wasn't as monotone and emotionless as I recall West End Girls being. So that's it didn't if anything, it made my job a hell of a lot easier deciphering lyrics. So that was a great aspect of it, that's for sure. Um so yeah, he has got this sort of direct delivery. He talks about waking up at 10:30 and phoning his party animal friend before turning on the news and having some tea. He also mentions the possibility of doing some shopping, which is all very, I don't know, like mundane kind of just inane activities. Like he's just taking down notes on what it's almost like a journal or something like that. That's how these read. There is some nice bass work happening below the surface throughout this bit as well that kind of stood out to me. And the singer also mentions learning to read and drive and an aversion to talking street, 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 and makes another reference to the party animal before the song shifts to the chorus. And during the chorus, the singer inches closer to conventional singing. It has more of a sing-songy type delivery, but it's short-lived as the song shifts back into the verse. I should say, though, that the chorus is interesting in that he presents two very like different possible outcomes. He could leave this person and say goodbye, or he could love them if he tried. He then follows this up by singing that if left to his own devices, he probably would. But I'm not sure which of those two possible
Yeah.
outcomes he's alluding to with that the sort of like open-ended approach to the wording. It's like, well, which one are you talking about, man? So after we get another couple of verses, and that's another interesting thing. It's like these verses appear in couplets. It would appear like stanza, then another stanza of verse, and then it goes into the chorus. So we get introduced to this next couplet, again delivered in a very direct sort of spoken word style before the song again moves back into the chorus. And this is followed by more of this synth-driven instrumental work before the music pulls back and we get treated to one of John's favorite musical advents, the bridge. And the bridge is built on these resonant notes that sort of cascade over top of very hi-hat driven beat. As the singer describes an interesting choice he had to make in his youth to become an author or an actor, while distracted by the sound of feet in the back of his head. And of course, Those feet belonged to a turn of the century French composer and an Argentinian Marxist revolutionary, dancing to a disco beat, naturally, as they would. This is super weird, interesting lyrics. This is followed.
Pretentious, moi.
Yeah, wee wee.
Yeah,
This is
so
followed by
funny.
very interesting upward sound in the music before it very briefly cuts out and the singer delivers the line, "It's not a crime," just as the beat and music are reintroduced to the mix. And we're now back into another couplet of verses where, again, he kind of paints this picture of a man not sure of what to do with himself. So he occupies his time with rather inane or benign activities to pass the time. Though it is clear throughout all of this, he is still thinking about this you he is referred to several times in the song. Um, he also, like in this bit, he I think he references reading a book or picking up a book, which earlier he had mentioned that he doesn't do that or he needs to learn to do that, which is an interesting. I don't know if that's supposed to illustrate growth in the character or what, but it's just odd, interesting, almost contradictory kind of information that we're getting from the guy. Um, so he ends the last verse with the line, "Waiting for the minute I hear you say," and then the drum drops these steady quarter note strikes before the snare rolls, creates this culminating effect that blossoms into the song, shifting into the chorus. And this time, the last bit of the chorus that contains the titular line is repeated before some grand flourishes on the strings and the horns, and this kind of brings the song to an end. I enjoyed giving this song a go, even if it's admittedly not something I would normally seek out. I did really like the string and horn arrangements that gave this song this added bit of heft and, dare I say, kind of maturity to the sound. And these additions were made even more interesting when juxtaposed to that almost techno synth beat, which is very much this kind of like 80s sound. The subject matter wasn't exactly self-explanatory, though, like via the lyrics, which, seemed a bit scatterbrained or just, I don't know. It's interesting, but not cohesive for upon this one listen. Though it was kind of like fun and funny. It had these I mean, come on, the weird allusion to, was it Debussy and Che Guevara? It's like, what are we doing here? Why did you show up, and why dancing to a techno disco beat or whatever? So, I've got more questions than I do answers, obviously. But tell me more about the song, its history, and if you have it, God, please shed some light on the meaning of the narrative here. At points, it sounded like it could be almost autobiographical, but he shifts between um autobiographical information to, like, now I'm just describing what I'm doing on a random Tuesday or something like that. You know what I mean? Which is less autobiographical and more just like taking notes in a serial killer's journal or something. It's just really weird. So tell me more, please, John. This interesting song.
I think serial shopper rather than serial killer, but yeah. Okay, interesting. All right, I'll get into it in a second, but I'll also give you my two penneth worth. All right. When this suggestion came out, I thought, oh, this is interesting. Um, Obviously, I know the song, so Andy's gonna have to do this. I wonder what he makes of this. And without, I haven't heard it. It's probably I don't know, 20 odd years since it was in the charts, probably. And I actually re-listened to it for this, and yeah, I had a different opinion of it, from back then. I will say this about Pet Shop Boys: their overall sound has developed and changed over the years. Been going a long time. It always fairly thoughtful pop-based music, and there's always usually some sort of humor in it. Usually fairly dry as well. And the two of them work very well together. He does have this sort of talking stroke singing style, which
Mm.
he developed later on. He has got a nice voice, actually. It's not the strongest of voices, but it has a very sort of a dainty melody to it. You hear in other songs, it is quite well done. Um, Yeah, this one though has got that really interesting mixture of this sort of synth pop bass mixed in with a sort of house style, which was de rigueur at the time, that Italian house piano, and then you have the orchestral um, sort of components on top of it. And his vocal melody is kind of almost old school, particularly the chorus bit's almost like 60s.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting mixture. I don't believe it works all the time. There's sometimes when the strings and that come in, it's overblown. But that's also part of their charm as well. They can be very camp, they can be over the top as well. Um, but I'll get into it because I think the story about them is quite interesting. There's so much to go at because they've been going such a long time and they have done a lot. So I'm going to concentrate on just a few bits and pieces. So, Pet Shop Boys are still an English synth pop duo formed in London in 1981, consisting of vocalist Neil Tennant and keyboardist Chris Lowe. They have sold more than 100 million records worldwide, and they're listed as the most successful duo in UK music history in
Wow.
the Guinness Book of Records. So they met in a hi-fi shop in Chelsea, London, in 1981. Got chatting, discovered they had a mutual interest in disco and electronic music. Obviously, 81 is quite the early beginnings of synth pop and proper electronic music. And they became friends anyway. And they started to work together on material. And as they did, they briefly demoed their demo tapes under the band name West End before settling instead on Pet Shop Boys. They say that their band name was taken from friends who worked in a pet shop in Ealing and were known as the Pet Shop Boys. Just incident, I didn't write this down, but I don't think Neil Tennant came out until mid-90s at least, because he didn't want it to be part of the
Right.
conversation about the band. It's none of his fucking business, and he's totally right. But everything has a sort of a camp underline, humor to everything they do. It's very funny. Um, so in 1983, Tennant was assistant editor at Smash Hits, which is, you probably wouldn't be familiar with it. It's a sort of pop magazine basically aimed at the early teenage market.
Okay.
Um, and I remember reading Smash Hits when I was, I think I was still at primary school, like, 9 years old or 10. And the cool thing about it, it was like a little color sort of magazine every week or whatever. And you could get like little posters that were the size of A4, sort of,
Yeah.
on the wall. And then also they print the lyrics to certain songs as well. So then you knew all the words to Japanese Boy by Nika. There you go. Or whatever.
This sounds like the like y'all's version of what we had, which I think was Tiger Beat, which was something very similar in the 80s. That was just like
Yeah.
pop music, and you cut the pages out and post them all over your wall.
Yeah,
Paul
yeah, yeah.
Abdul comes to mind.
Yeah, yeah. And I think Toya was in it every bloody week. I remember when I was a kid. But anyway, yeah, it was hugely popular. One of the biggest selling magazines in the country for a while, anyway. And they were quite famous as well for doing the horrible interviews with bands where they'd have like a biscuit tin full of really shitty questions, like if you were going to be a flower, which one would you be, and all this fucking
Yeah.
bollocks. Anyway. So he was, assistant editor of that. Anyway, he went to New York on assignment to interview Sting. But while he was there, he met with high energy producer Bobby Orlando and gave him some demo tapes, including a couple of their songs, It's a Sin and Opportunities, brackets that make lots of money, which were both massive hits later on. In April 84, Orlando co-produced West End Girls, and it was released. And it became a club hit in Los Angeles and San Francisco and a minor dance hit in Belgium and France, but it was only available in the UK as a 12-inch import, so it didn't really do anything. So they had a rethink, and in 85, they cut ties with him, paid him off a bit, I think. They signed with Parlophone label, and in April, Tennant left Smash Hits magazine, his day job. Um, and July, a new single, Opportunities, that made lots of money, was released, and it got to number 116 in the UK.
Ooh.
So they went back in the studios, re-recorded West End Girls. They released it in October 85, and it rose slowly. It's one of these old school ones where it went, it was released in October and it got to number one in January 86. So, just creeping up the charts
Yeah.
week by week and getting noticed, which is the really old school way of doing it, as opposed to it's number two, it's number one, it's number 10, it's out of the charts, all in the space of 4 weeks. So yeah, it got to number one in the UK. It also got to number one in the United States, which is a huge, success for them. Canada, Finland, Hong Kong, Israel, Ireland, New Zealand, Norway, all number one, and it sold an estimated 1.5 million copies worldwide just of that single.
Amazing.
More on them later. Back to this. So, Left to My Own Devices. Um, it was released in 1988 as the second single from their third studio album, Introspective. Um, it was written because the Pet Shop Boys wanted to work with producer Trevor Horn, and they needed a song to record, so they wrote this. Now, just a word about Trevor Horn. He is producer extraordinaire, especially in the 80s. He was also a member of a couple of bands, so he was a member of the band Buggles, which wasn't really a band, but was. They did the great song Video Killed the Radio Star, which
Okay.
is quite a old school famous one.
Yeah.
An album, I think it's called Living in the Plastic Age, which is fairly successful as well. He then also was part of or formed the band, you might as well call it, Art of Noise, which incorporated sampling and all that sort of thing. One of the first ones to do it, and creating artificial stuff that way. But his main job was a producer, and he produced so much. He produced the original Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Relax, which is just one of the biggest songs of the 80s in this country. I know he produced like Seal's first album as well. He does like shitloads of stuff, yeah. So really highly respected. He does have that 80s sound to him, which has, made him so successful then. But anyway, so the day before they were going to meet with Horn, they made a demo at Abbey Road of an instrumental by Chris Lowe, the keyboardist, and a line that Neil Tennant came up with, which was "Left to My Own Devices, I probably would." And he finished the lyrics a few days later, and he explained his process in quotes. That's when he realized what the song was about, that this person goes through life always doing what he wanted to do. I like the idea of writing a really up pop song about being left alone. The song is the day in the life of somebody, so it starts off with getting out of bed and being on the phone and drinking tea and all the rest of it. That ends up with coming home. By this time, I was making the words very exaggerated and camp. Through writing a book and going on stage were both things I'd wanted to do when I was young. Tennant called the song an exaggerated autobiography.
Mm.
He included child reminiscences of being in a world of my own at the back of the garden, playing with toy soldiers in his family home in Newcastle, although he actually pretended to be a cavalier instead of a roundhead general, as in the song. The party animal on the phone was Tennant's friend John Savage, and Trevor Horn was the actual source of the phrase Debussy to a disco beat, which Tennant paired with Che Guevara to combine revolution with beauty. Anyway, Miranda Sawyer from Smash Hits named Left to My Own Devices Single of the Fortnight, writing Pop Perfection from the Winsome Twosome. You can tell they're writing for 12-year-olds. Complete with swank orchestra, this massive stomper galumps away at a breakneck pace into all sorts of dramatic twists and turns, over which Neil's deadpan vocals sound brilliantly menacing. A storming chorus plus one of those superbly pretentious talking bits Neil does, rounded off with a breathtaking violin swoosh. Must ensure that this soars to the top of the charts and stays there for weeks and weeks. A truly awe-inspiring single of the fortnight. The single did actually get to number 4 in the charts, and number 84 in the Hot 100. So the lyrics. I think there's an extended version of this song, which you thankfully didn't get. So there were bits when I got the lyrics that weren't in the clip I gave you, but it makes no odds. You've got the meat and potatoes of the song. So you may or may not have heard it, but there's a woman saying house, house at the start. And then lyrics proper. I get out of bed at 10:30, phone up a friend who's a party animal, turn on the news and drink some tea. Maybe if you're with me, we'll do some shopping. One day I'll read or learn to drive a car. If you pass the test, you can beat the rest. But I don't like to compete or talk street. I can pick up the best from the party animal. I could leave you, say goodbye. I could love you if I try. And I could. And left to my own devices, probably would. Pick up a brochure about the sun. Learn to ignore what the photographers saw. I was always told that you should join a club. Stick with the gang if you want to belong. I was a lonely boy, no strength, no joy, in a world of my own at the back of the garden. I didn't want to compete or play out on the street, for in a secret life I was a roundhead general. I could leave you, say goodbye, or I could love you if I try, and I could. But left to my own devices, I probably would. Left to my own devices, I probably would. Oh, I would. The bridge. I was faced with a choice at a difficult age. Would I write a book or should I take to the stage? But in the back of my head, I heard distant feet, Che Guevara and Debussy to a disco beat. It's not a crime when you look the way you do, the way I like to picture you. When I get home, it's late at night. I pour a drink, watch the fight. Turn off the TV, look at a book. Pick up the phone, fix some food. Maybe I'll sit up all night and day, waiting for the minute I hear you say, I could leave you, say goodbye, or I could love you if I try. I could. And left to my own devices, I probably would. Come on, baby, say goodbye. I could love you if I try, and I could. And left to my own devices, I probably would. Left to my own devices, I probably would. And left to my own devices, I probably would. Come on, baby, left to my own devices, probably would. So there's a couple of interesting, semi-interesting annotated notes from the lyrics. So the voice that you may or may not have heard at the start is a lady called Sally Bradshaw, a British opera singer who often sang with the duo in some of their other songs. She sung the word house in the intro, and he says the reason for that was because there was a lot of house records at the time that start with the words house music in them. And she also sings, I think this is an extended version, she sings I Would If I Could later on in the song, sort of back up his vocals. So
Okay.
there you go. When he says about, just scroll up and down, up and down, oh, one day I'll read or learn to drive a car. At that time, he would have been in his 30s and he hadn't learned to drive yet. So that's why he put that in.
Well, what about
He
the
says,
had he learned to read at that point? Because he makes
I mean,
always.
he was deputy editor of Smash Hit, so odds are probably not. He says about he was a lonely boy, no strength, no joy. Apparently, that's a play on words on strength through joy. You know, the 1930s German organization,
Mm,
Kraft durch Freude. And yeah, this one as well is a bit odd. I didn't want to compete or stay out of the street, for in a secret life I was a roundhead general. Now they make lots of things about the fact that this is a historical reference to the English Civil War, and that Neil Tennant is a big history fan and considered studying it. I have to say also that in the 80s, roundhead was also a sort of slang name for someone who'd been circumcised.
uh,
I think they slipped that in because it's got a double entendre and it's hilarious. And it's a cock joke, which who can resist? So I think that's why it's really in there. Um, anyway, so back to the story. So Pet Shop Boys have achieved 42 top 30 singles in the UK, including 22 top 10 hits and 4 number ones in the UK. West End Girls, It's a Sin, a synth pop version of Always on My Mind, Elvis's song, and the song Heart. Other songs that are quite interesting is a cover of Go West, a cover of U2's Where the Streets Have No Name, as a medley with Can't Take My Eyes Off You from, the Four Seasons, Frankie
yeah.
Valli and the Four Seasons. And also the song What Have I Done to Deserve This, which is a duet with Dusty Springfield. And they kind of dusted her off out of retirement, got her in to sing on that. That was quite something as well. I have to say, the Where the Streets Have No Name stroke Can't Take My Eyes Off You is both brilliant and hilarious and hugely camp. I mean, it's something to behold. Just to give you an idea of how popular they were, their first 5 albums, platinum, triple platinum, double platinum, contain this track, platinum, platinum. Yeah,
Jesus.
yeah. So yeah, they were right at the top of the game.
Yeah, I knew that they were popular, but I didn't know that they were that popular.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So they have won 3 Brit Awards and they've been nominated for several Grammys. At the 2009 Brit Awards in London, they received an award for outstanding contribution to music, a bit like a Lifetime Achievement Award.
Mhm.
And in 2016, Billboard named Pet Shop Boys as the #1 dance duo or group since the chart's inception in 1976. And in fact, in overall artists, they were fourth, only behind Madonna, Michael Jackson, and Donna Summer.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, that is. In 2017, the duo received NME's Godlike Genius Award, and in 2024, they were awarded the Pop Pioneers Award at the MTV Europe Music Awards. I think I remember, not because I saw it or whatever, but I think around about the same time they had a Pet Shop Boys evening on the BBC, I think on a Saturday evening, and they had bits like a documentary and some stuff for the live footage, and then other bits with interviews and all that sort of stuff. And I did watch a little bit of it, and it was really quite interesting. They were talking about how they put stuff together for certain of their songs. Um, they're still going strong and still touring, and their latest album, Nonetheless. Just by the way, all their albums are one-word titles that started from the very start and gone on from there.
Okay.
So Nonetheless was released last year in 2024 and it reached #2 in the UK charts.
Wow.
So they're
Still
still
going.
knocking them out. Yeah, I will say, I mean, they're not always particularly my cup of tea. I think as a kid, when they came out, or sort of like maybe in my early teens, I think so. They're a really strong run of singles at the start. Sort of, There's a Sin, An Opportunity was sort of, classic chart type poppy songs that really were strong. I still maintain, I think West End Girls is a great, great debut single. I think it's, well, not technically, but it is for me. But it's a great single. It really is. Yeah. So yeah, interesting. Really interesting sort of shout from Danielle
Yeah.
to suggest this one. I think it's certainly something I would never have thought of popping up to you, but yeah, definitely an interesting one.
Yeah, no, I had fun listening to it. Was able to clearly extrapolate the humor in it.
Yeah,
It was just
that's
interesting.
the thing.
You helped shed light on how it translated or what angle they were coming at from a lyrical standpoint as far as the big picture is concerned. So that helped a bit. But yeah, I loved the sound of it. It's just not something I would have actively sought out, but there's
Yeah.
probably, tens and hundreds of songs like that when they do fall in my lap, I'm like, oh, better for having heard this.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Okay, I shall wrap things up.
Yeah.
Um, Thanks, this is Andy. Thanks, Daniel, for suggesting this. Great shout. Folks out there, tell us what you think. If you like this, please hit the like button. Perhaps you've got a baseball cap with boy on it. And drop some comments. Tell us what you think. If you haven't subscribed already, please do. We really appreciate everybody to support the channel. And also, if you've got a tune that you want us to listen to, please drop it as a suggestion. Comment any of the episodes, and we'll add it to the list. The list. And we'll get around to it someday. That being said, thanks again so much for watching, and we'll see all of you in the next episode of the Audiophiles.
See you later, guys.